I'm Mark Rooker. I'm a full professor in metals. Educational background, I did my undergraduate in graphic design, actually, in University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and then went back to school for a master's degree in graphic design, which probably leaves you thinking, why is he a metalsmith now? But where I did my graduate school, you had to do half of your credits outside of your major area, so I had taken my last semester of senior year, I had taken a metals class and fallen in love with it. So when I got the chance to do more of it in grad school, I did, and it just kind of snowballed from there to the point where I ended up with 2 master's degrees, one in graphic design and one in metals and jewelry, both from University of Illinois. Well, this came out of a very pragmatic decision, right? I had the deadline for the faculty show coming up very quickly. I'd started this set of knives and really wanted to put them in, and knew it wasn't going to be possible to do it in time. All right, but we had just come back from vacation where we had had an amazing meal at one of the lab restaurants at the Culinary Institute of America, and it was served in courses, and I thought, well, maybe I can just do like they do with the food, right? Finish it one at a time, serve it, and then finish the next one and send it out. So started off just putting the first piece in the show, and then about every 5 days or so, as I finished the next one, installing that and putting a new title and label up and just kind of segueing it in that way. And the books came about because you always have the problem with doing what I do, which is mostly small-scale work, right? The way that metals and jewelry is taught typically both in graduate programs and undergrad is that it's essentially small-scale sculpture, most of the time wearable, sometimes functional. And probably 20 years ago, I got interested in making knives and started making knives. But you always have the same problem, which is what to do with really small-scale work in an enormous space when you're exhibiting it. So I've been experimenting for quite a long time with installation as a way of sort of expanding past the objects that were in the show. So that's part of where the books came from, was how am I going to install these knives in a way that gives them real presence and turns them into more than just these functional objects, especially when in an exhibition you can't really interact with the objects in a way where you can really tell how they function. So all I can really do is show how they function. And given that they're cooking knives, it led to the problem of like, well, how do you show how they function in a month-long show without having rotting food laying around, or without letting people interact with the knives and potentially hurt themselves or whatever. So, you know, one of the things that I was able to do in graduate school was work with some artist books and book sculpture kinds of ideas, and that's where the altered cookbooks came out. Was just thinking about they could serve as the stand-in for the food, kind of reinforce that concept of serving them in courses, and you know, serve that purpose of showing how those different knives functioned, because since it's a set of culinary knives, they all have different functions that if you cook a lot and you have a set of knives, you know what those functions are, but if you don't, you might not. So it needs that little bit of extra sort of information to interpret, and it just became kind of a fun new avenue of exploration with creating the altered books. The knives are kind of an extension. I mean, I've been making knives, like I said, for quite a long time, and this particular design I've been making, but I had never made a full set of them before. So it was an opportunity to sort of finish out a whole set and be able to experiment with the different kinds and different materials, which is why they're all different handle materials and some different finishes on the blades and things like that. So it was another, you know, again, it was an opportunity to work that through in a whole series of pieces. And then the books, honestly, the knives are a struggle in their own way, just because they are the ultimate expression of form follows function. Like basically, if you get that wrong in a knife, it just doesn't work very well. And there's also just that jeweler's level of like craft that's expected with culinary knives. The books are kind of the opposite, right? I mean, there's no expectations of craft when you're tearing up a book, just form and the visual expression of it, which was freeing, but also just kind of a struggle in its own right, since I hadn't done this kind of alteration project before. And then trying to figure out how, once you destroy the structure of the book, how to get it to hang on the wall. You know, because each one of those had to be kind of reinvented as I went along, depending on what I'd done with the book. So there's a lot of like hack and slash, and then going, oh, what the heck do I do with this now, right? How do I stick it up on the wall? And not have the mount be too evident, too. I didn't want that to be a real noticeable part of the piece. So a lot of just practical considerations. Right straight from the beginning, it's all problem solving, like one after the other. What do I do for the faculty show? Finish the knives. Well, how am I going to do that in time? Do them one at a time. How am I going to put them on the wall? Well, use the books, right? And just kind of culminates, hopefully, by the time you're done, into something that actually works, right? Where all those decisions seem completely logical and almost inevitable.